It was raining. The windows were fogged up. And I was sitting alone in the car, while my own children were inside, laughing, eating, celebrating. They had made the dinner reservation. They had driven in my car, and they had told me to wait outside because it would be too awkward if I came in. I sat there for almost 2 hours. Not one of them checked on me. Not one of them brought me a plate. That night changed everything. I had always given them everything they asked for, but they had forgotten something very important. I was the one who paid for those cars, and when they left me in the dark, I finally saw the light. Before we jump back in, tell us where you are tuning in from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe, because tomorrow I have saved something truly special just for you. My name is Linda. I am 56 years old. I live in a quiet neighborhood on the edge of town. The streets are lined with tall trees. In the fall, their leaves turn gold and red. My house is small, but it is warm and full of memories. Every morning, I wake up around 6. I make a cup of tea. I sit by the window and listen to the birds. I do not need much to feel at peace. Just that quiet moment before the world begins to move again. I have 2 grown children, Michael and Jenny. Michael is 32. He works in real estate. He wears nice suits and speaks fast on the phone. Jenny is 29. She is married and has 2 children of her own, my sweet grandchildren, Ellie and Max. They are the reason I keep going. Their little hands, their giggles, their sleepy eyes when they come over for movie night. Those are the moments that give my life meaning. I used to work in a bank. I was an assistant manager for over 20 years. I liked the order of it. The numbers, the quiet of early morning shifts, the feeling of solving small problems for people who trusted me. But when the bank closed our branch, they offered early retirement. I took it. Now my days are slower. I clean the kitchen. I fold the laundry. I water my plants. I take long walks. Sometimes I visit the local library just to sit and read a magazine. I always bring butterscotch candies for the lady at the front desk. Her name is Dora. She wears bright lipstick and tells funny stories about her cat. It is not an exciting life, but it is mine. And until recently, I thought it was enough. On Sundays, we always had family dinner. That was my rule. Michael would bring wine. Jenny would bake her famous lemon bars. The children would play on the carpet with old toys I kept from when their parents were little. I would make roast chicken or lasagna. Sometimes we would eat outside under the fairy lights I strung up myself. We would laugh. We would talk. We would share memories of their father, my late husband, Tom. He passed away 10 years ago. It still feels strange to say that. Some days, I still expect to hear his voice calling from the garage. Those Sunday dinners were everything to me. I wanted my children to feel safe in my home. I wanted them to know that no matter how busy life became, this place would always be here, with warm food, soft chairs, and someone who loved them deeply. But things began to change. Little things. Nothing too serious at first. Michael started coming late. He would answer calls during dinner. Jenny seemed distracted. She checked her phone more often than she looked at my face. The children still hugged me tight, but their visits grew shorter. I told myself it was normal. They were adults now. They had their own lives, their own families, their own problems. I was not supposed to be the center of their world anymore. Still, I missed the way they used to smile at me. I missed the way they used to ask for my advice. I missed being important. One day, I looked in the mirror and hardly recognized myself. Not because of age, not because of wrinkles or gray hair, but because I had become invisible. I was always there for them. I helped with down payments. I co-signed loans. I babysat without being asked. I filled their fridges when money was tight. I said yes, even when I wanted to say no. I gave them everything I had, without asking for much in return. But slowly, quietly, I started to feel like a convenience. Not a mother, not a friend, just someone to use when it suited them. And still, I stayed quiet. Because that is what mothers do, right? We give, we give, we give. Until one day, something small, something so simple, wakes you up. That day was coming for me. I did not see it yet, but I could feel it in the silence after Sunday dinner, in the way Jenny did not say goodbye when she left early, in the way Michael looked past me when he talked. My normal life was about to change, and I was not ready for what was coming. It began with small things. So small, I almost did not notice them at first. One Thursday afternoon, I went to drop off a casserole at Jenny's house. She had mentioned being tired lately, and I wanted to help. It was nothing special, just my usual tuna bake with extra cheese, the kind her father used to love. When I arrived, I rang the bell and waited. I saw shadows moving inside, heard the dog bark. But no one came to the door. I waited for 5 minutes, then 10. Finally, I pulled out my phone and called her. She answered, but her voice was flat. "Hi, Mom. I'm really busy right now. Can you just leave it on the porch?" That was it. "No, thank you. No, I will call you later. Just leave it on the porch." I stood there for a moment, holding the warm casserole. I looked at the closed door. I could hear voices inside. Maybe the television, maybe a friend. I could not tell. But it made something inside me shift. I placed the dish gently on the welcome mat, turned around, and walked back to my car. As I drove home, I told myself she was probably just tired. Everyone has hard days. But then, a few days later, Michael called. Or rather, he texted. He wanted to borrow the car. Not my everyday car, the older one I use for groceries, but the new SUV I had bought last year after saving for nearly a decade. The one with heated seats and soft leather. The one I had only just started to enjoy. "I have a big client lunch," he wrote. "Need something that looks a little nicer. I will bring it back tomorrow." No, please. No real explanation. He assumed I would say yes, because I always did. I stared at the message for a long time before replying. "All right. Keys are in the drawer. Please drive safe." He never responded to say thank you. He never even looked me in the eye when he picked it up. Just grabbed the keys, mumbled something, and left. That evening, I sat in the living room and tried to focus on a book. But the words blurred. My thoughts wandered. Something felt off. Something felt wrong. I looked around the room. The same room where I had held both of them as babies. The couch where they had curled up with fevered cheeks. The wall covered in framed photos. Birthdays, graduations, Christmas mornings. Every image told a story of love. A story of time. A story of a mother who had been there for everything, But now they barely looked at me when they spoke. They barely spoke at all. The silence had changed. It was not peaceful anymore. It was cold. Later that week, I went to the grocery store. As I was putting bags into the trunk, I saw Michael's car drive past. In the passenger seat was a woman I did not recognize. His window was down. He did not see me. I waved, just in case. But they drove on. Fast. Laughing. Music loud. It was a small thing. And yet, I felt something sink in my chest. When I got home, I opened the freezer to put things away. My hands were trembling, and that was when I realized it was not just about the casserole or the car or the wave. It was about how invisible I was becoming. Little by little, bit by bit, like someone slowly fading from a photo. At dinner that Sunday, I made my usual roast chicken. The house smelled like rosemary and garlic. I lit candles. I even put on lipstick, the soft coral shade that Tom used to say made me look like spring. Michael came late. Jenny never showed up. She sent a message an hour later. "So sorry, Mom. Lost track of time. We'll call you tomorrow." She did not call. I looked around the table. 2 empty chairs, a full plate of food, and one mother, sitting alone. I did not cry. Not that night. I just sat there for a long time, holding my fork, listening to the ticking clock on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. Each second louder than the last. I could feel something changing. I could not name it yet. But it was there, heavy, quiet, real. The next few days felt strange. Not loud, not dramatic. Just strange. I went about my usual routine. I woke up early. I made tea. I fed the birds in the backyard and watched the morning light touch the trees. I folded laundry. I took a short walk. Everything looked the same, but it felt different, like I was watching my life from far away. I kept checking my phone, hoping Jenny would call. She did not. Michael did not either. I told myself they were busy. I told myself I was being too sensitive. Maybe I needed a hobby. Maybe I needed to stop depending on them so much. But the truth was, I did not want anything from them except a little love, a little time, a little warmth. I sat in my armchair that afternoon, looking out the window. The light was soft. A few children were riding bicycles down the street. One of them waved at me. I smiled and waved back. Then I looked at my phone again. Still no messages, still no calls. I felt a sharp little ache in my chest. Not strong, just a quiet, dull pain that stayed. The next morning, I decided to go out and do something different. I dressed nicely. I put on my pale blue sweater and a long necklace I had not worn in years. I even curled my hair a little, just like I used to when Tom and I went dancing. I drove to a small cafe downtown, one with outdoor tables and soft music, playing through hidden speakers. I ordered a coffee and a slice of carrot cake. As I sat there, I watched people walk by. Young couples holding hands, a mother pushing a stroller, an old man with a brown hat and kind eyes. Life was moving all around me, and yet I felt like I was not part of it. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through photos. There was one of Jenny and the kids at the park. I had taken it just a few months ago. Ellie was laughing, her arms wide open. Max had chocolate on his chin, Jenny was smiling. That day had felt perfect. But now, I could not remember the last time they visited. I could not remember the last time Michael asked how I was feeling. When did the shift happen? Was it something I said? Something I did? I thought back. I tried to find the moment it all changed, but I could not. There was no big fight, no argument, no clear reason. It was like a soft curtain had fallen between us, and I had only just noticed it. That afternoon, I drove past Jenny's house again. I had not planned to. My car just turned that way. I slowed down as I passed. There were 2 cars in the driveway. Hers, and another one I did not recognize. The curtains were closed. I did not stop. I just kept driving. A few blocks later, I pulled over. I turned off the engine. I sat with my hands on the steering wheel and stared ahead. My throat felt tight. I did not cry, but my eyes were wet. What had happened to us? That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my journal. I had not written in it for months, but something told me I needed to now. I opened to a fresh page and wrote, "I feel confused. I do not know where I went wrong. I gave them everything, my time, my heart, my money, and now I feel like a stranger. Maybe it is me. Maybe I am expecting too much, but I miss the way they used to look at me. I miss being needed. I miss being loved." I closed the journal and placed it in the drawer. I made myself a cup of herbal tea and sat in the living room. The silence felt heavier that night. It sat beside me like an uninvited guest. The phone stayed quiet. I turned on the television for noise, but I could not focus. I kept thinking about the casserole on the porch, the car Michael borrowed, the way Jenny's message ended without a single word of kindness. I knew I was not perfect, but I also knew I had always shown up for them. Always. And now, as I sat in the glow of the television, I whispered to myself, I do not understand. I felt lost. I felt alone. I felt confused. The next morning, I woke up early again. The sky outside was still dark, but I could not sleep. My mind kept playing the same thoughts over and over like a broken record. I kept asking myself questions I could not answer. I walked down to the kitchen and made a cup of tea. The house was quiet, still. I stood by the window, watching the light slowly appear behind the trees. Everything looked peaceful, but inside me it did not feel that way. That was when my phone buzzed. It was Michael. Just seeing his name made my heart jump. For a moment I thought, maybe he remembered. Maybe he cares. The message said, "Hey Mom, are you around today? Thought I could stop by." I stared at it for a while. It was not long. It was not emotional. But it was something. And after the last few weeks, something felt like everything. I wrote back, "Yes, I am home all day." I tried to keep the message simple, not too excited, not too desperate. But the truth was, I rushed around the house like a schoolgirl waiting for a guest. I cleaned the kitchen. I fluffed the pillows on the couch. I even baked banana bread, his favorite since he was a little boy. I changed into a soft cream sweater and brushed my hair. I told myself I was being silly, but I could not help it. I wanted this visit to feel warm. I wanted him to feel welcome. I wanted him to remember who I was, not just as his mother, but as a person who loved him deeply. He arrived around noon. I watched from the window as he stepped out of his car. He had grown into such a tall, handsome man. I remembered holding his tiny hand on his first day of school. Now here he was, a grown adult, walking up the path like a stranger. When I opened the door, I smiled. "Hi, sweetheart." He gave a quick hug, not long, not close, and stepped inside. The smell of banana bread filled the air. "Smells good in here?" he said. "I thought you might like something warm," I replied. We sat at the table. I poured tea. He took a bite of the bread and nodded. "This is great, Mom. You still have the touch." I smiled, but something in me stayed alert. I watched his eyes, his hands, his posture. He looked tired. Not just physically, tired in his soul. After a few moments of silence, he finally spoke. "I wanted to talk to you about something." His voice was calm but serious. I felt a tiny wave of fear rise inside me. "All right, what is it?" He looked down at his hands. "It is about the car." I knew it. He had not come to see me. He had come for the car. "I was thinking," he continued, "maybe I could use it for a few more weeks. Things at work have been a little rough, and appearances matter with clients." I nodded slowly, trying not to let the sadness show. "I understand," I said softly. He looked up at me. "It is just temporary. I promise. I will take care of it." "I know you will," I said. But inside, I felt something twist. He was here, sitting in my kitchen, eating my banana bread, drinking my tea, but I felt like he was already gone. Still, I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust him. He was my son. I had raised him to be honest. I had taught him to be kind. So I said, "Michael, I just want to feel like I matter to you, not just when you need something." His face changed. "Mom, of course you matter." Then, "Why do I feel like I have become invisible?" He looked uncomfortable. "It is not like that. Things have just been busy. Jenny and we are both dealing with a lot." I nodded again. "I know life is hard, but family should not fade away when things get busy." He sighed. "I will do better." I wanted to believe him. I needed to. I reached out and touched his hand. "That is all I ask." He smiled, not fully, but enough. "Thanks, Mom." We talked a little more after that. Light conversation, safe topics. Then he left. When the door closed behind him, the house felt even quieter than before. I stood there, staring at the empty cup on the table. I wanted to trust him. I wanted to believe that things would change. But deep down, I was not sure anymore. 2 days passed after Michael's visit. I kept replaying the conversation in my head, his words, his tone, the way he said he would do better. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But something in my heart felt uneasy. I tried to shake it off. I cooked. I cleaned. I went for a walk in the park. The trees were starting to bloom. A few small flowers pushed through the grass. Spring was arriving, quietly and slowly. Still, the heaviness inside me did not lift. That Friday morning, I met with my friend Linda for breakfast. We met once a month at the same little diner, a cozy place with chipped mugs and friendly waitresses, who always remembered our names. When I walked in, Linda was already there. She waved at me and smiled. Her silver hair was tied back in a neat ponytail, and her glasses were resting on the tip of her nose. "Good morning, stranger," she said, giving me a warm hug. "You look tired." I laughed softly. "Do I? I guess I am." We sat down and ordered our usual eggs, toast, and coffee. The waitress poured our drinks, and Linda leaned forward. "All right, tell me. What is going on? Something is not right. I can see it on your face." I took a deep breath. "I do not know how to explain it, Linda. I feel forgotten, like I am slowly disappearing from my own family." Linda listened carefully, nodding now and then. I told her everything: the casserole, the quiet nights, the car, Michael's visit. I even told her about the way Jenny's message felt cold, almost like I was some distant aunt, not her mother. When I finished, Linda sat back and sipped her coffee. Then she said something I did not expect. "Margaret, I know this is hard to hear, but sometimes people show us who they are when they think we are no longer useful to them." I stared at her. "What do you mean?" She looked down at her hands and spoke slowly. "I went through something similar with my nephew last year. He stopped calling, stopped visiting, until he needed money for his business. I helped him, of course. I always do. But once he had what he wanted, he disappeared again." I felt a chill run through me. Linda reached across the table and touched my hand gently. "I am not saying your children are using you, Margaret. But I am saying this. If the only time they show up is when they need something, you need to ask yourself why." Her words hit me like a soft but steady wave. "I never thought of it that way," I said quietly. Linda's voice grew even softer. "I know you love them, and I know they love you in their own way, but love without respect, it can feel very lonely." I stared at the table. My tea had gone cold. "I want to believe in them," I whispered. Linda nodded. "Of course you do. That is what makes you a good mother. But being a good mother does not mean you have to keep giving parts of yourself away. Not if they are not giving anything back." I let her words settle. They were not harsh. They were not cruel. They were careful, like a warning whispered in the wind. After breakfast, we hugged tightly. She kissed my cheek and said, "Be gentle with yourself, Margaret, but do not be blind." On the drive home, I thought about everything she said. Was I being blind? Was I letting love cover up what I did not want to see? When I got home, I sat in the kitchen and looked around. Photos of Jenny and Michael were everywhere, smiling, laughing, young and full of life. I remembered those days clearly. I remembered holding them when they cried. I remembered staying up all night when they were sick. I remembered cheering at every school event, every small success. I had given my heart to them, freely, fully, without regret. But now I was starting to see the cracks, not in my love, in theirs. And Linda's voice stayed with me, like a soft echo. If they only show up when they need something, you need to ask yourself why. It was not an accusation. It was not anger. It was a warning, a gentle one, but a warning all the same, and I could no longer pretend not to hear it. After my conversation with Linda, I could not stop thinking. Her words followed me everywhere, into the kitchen, into the quiet hours of the afternoon, even into my dreams. But I tried to push them away. I told myself she was just being protective. I told myself she did not really know Michael and Jenny. She did not know the laughter we used to share, the bond we used to have, the late-night talks, the little notes on the fridge, the hugs that lasted longer than words ever could. I held onto those memories like a blanket. I wrapped myself in them when the house felt too cold, but even so, the doubt had started to settle. I cleaned the living room. I wiped the kitchen counters twice. I folded laundry that was already folded. I opened drawers for no reason, just to keep my hands moving. I tried to stay busy, because when I stopped moving, I had to face the silence. And the silence said things I did not want to hear. On Sunday, I decided to bake again. It was something I always loved. Something that made me feel useful. I made a batch of cinnamon rolls, extra soft, the way Jenny liked them. I even wrapped a few in a little paper box with a red ribbon. I thought maybe I could drive over to their place, maybe surprise them, maybe remind them that I was still here. As I walked to the car with the box in my hand, I paused. I looked at the driveway where Michael's old car used to sit. The one I had given him. It was not there anymore. Of course it was not. He had taken it weeks ago, and never brought it back. I brushed that thought aside and got in the car. The drive to Jenny's house was about 20 minutes. I knew the roads well. I had taken them 100 times, but that day, every turn felt unfamiliar. Every mile felt a little longer. When I pulled up to the house, I saw Jenny's car in the driveway. For a moment, I smiled. Maybe she was home alone. Maybe we could talk. Walked up the path, holding the box of cinnamon rolls carefully. When I rang the doorbell, I heard voices inside. Laughter. The door opened. Jenny stood there, surprised. "Mom, what are you doing here?" I held up the box. "I made something sweet. Thought you might like a little visit." She glanced behind her. "I wish you had called first," she said, lowering her voice. I felt a little sting in my chest. "Oh, I just thought it might be a nice surprise." Then I heard another voice behind her. Michael's voice. "Who is it?" he asked. Jenny turned and said, "It is Mom." He came to the door, smiling politely. "Hey, Mom." "Hi," I said, forcing a smile. "I brought some cinnamon rolls." Jenny took the box from me. "Thanks, Mom. That is really sweet." I waited a moment, hoping for an invitation inside. But it did not come. Michael looked a little uncomfortable. "We are actually in the middle of something," he said. "Work stuff." I nodded slowly. "Of course. I understand." Jenny hugged me, but it felt quick. "I will call you later, all right?" "All right," I said, and then the door closed. Stood there for a moment, alone. The smell of cinnamon still on my hands. I walked back to the car. The air felt colder than before. On the drive home, I tried to hold on to my peace. I told myself they were just busy, that I had caught them at a bad time, that it was not personal. But deep inside, I felt something quiet and sad. Still, I tried to ignore it. I spent the rest of the day cleaning again, folding again, baking again. I answered a few emails, paid some bills, fed the birds on the porch. I did not let myself cry. That night, as I lay in bed, I stared at the ceiling. I tried to focus on the good. I reminded myself of all the years I was needed. All the times I was hugged tightly. All the times my name was called with love. I told myself this was just a phase, that they were busy, that they still cared, that I was not being pushed away. And even though my heart was whispering something else, I told myself to be quiet, because sometimes it is easier to ignore the truth than to accept that something might be broken. And I was not ready to believe that yet. The next few days passed slowly. I did not hear from Jenny. She did not call. She did not text. The cinnamon rolls were probably eaten, or maybe they were thrown away. I told myself it did not matter, but it did. I spent a lot of time near the window, watching people pass by, watching the wind move the trees, watching the light shift on the wall as the day went from morning to evening. One afternoon, just after lunch, I heard a car pull into the driveway. I stood up quickly. It was Michael. I opened the door before he could knock. He looked surprised. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, Michael," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I did not know you were coming." He shrugged. "I was in the area. Thought I would stop by." He stepped inside, glancing around as if something had changed. But nothing had. The same family photos on the wall, the same ticking clock, the same warm smell of tea and old wood. I asked if he wanted something to drink. He said no. We sat in the living room, the room where he used to build pillow forts and fall asleep on my lap during thunderstorms. Now he sat across from me, legs crossed, hands folded. He looked older, more tired. But something else had changed too. It was the way he looked at me. Not with love, not with excitement, not even with kindness. He looked at me like I was an old book he had already read too, many times, like I was something familiar, but no longer interesting. I tried to start a light conversation. "How is work?" I asked. "Busy," he said. "That is good, I suppose." He nodded. "Yeah." Silence followed. I tried again. "Is Jenny doing all right? I have not heard from her." He raised one eyebrow. "She is fine, just busy too." I nodded. Then he looked at me and said, "Mom, we need to talk about the car." I sat up straighter. "What about it?" "I need the title transferred to my name. I want to sell it and get something newer." My heart paused. "That car was a gift," I said gently. "It is still in my name for a reason." "I know," he said. "But it makes things complicated with insurance, and I really want to upgrade." I stared at him. There was no thank you, no warmth, no question, just an expectation, an assumption that I would agree. Because I always did. "I will think about it," I said. He frowned. "There is not much to think about, is there?" I looked into his eyes. They were the same eyes I used to kiss goodnight. But now, they felt cold. "I just need time," I said. He leaned back. "All right." But he did not mean it. He stayed for 15 more minutes. Not once did he ask how I was feeling. Not once did he mention the cinnamon rolls. Not once did he say, "I miss you." When he stood to leave, I walked him to the door. "Thanks for stopping by," I said softly. He gave a quick nod and walked to his car without looking back. Watched him drive away, and then I closed the door and leaned against it. I felt empty, like a balloon that had been floating for too long and finally touched the ground. That night, I could not sleep. I kept seeing his face, his expression, His eyes, so blank, so distant. I kept hearing the way he said, "There is not much to think about." But there was. There was so much to think about. Why did his visits always have conditions? Why did our conversations feel more like business deals? Why did I feel like a burden in my own story? The way he looked at me stayed in my mind, not because it was cruel, but because it was careless. And sometimes careless hurts even more than cruelty, because it means you do not matter enough for someone to even try. I lay there in the dark, listening to the silence, and slowly, painfully, I began to wonder if I had become invisible to the very people I loved most. The morning after Michael's visit, I woke up early. The sun had not yet risen. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I made a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table, holding it between my hands like it was something alive, something warm, something that might understand me. I looked out the window at the pale sky and felt a question forming inside me, a question that had been growing for weeks, maybe even longer, but I had never dared to ask it. Until now. That morning I decided I would speak to Michael, not in passing, not gently, but truly. Honestly. I needed to ask him the truth, because I could not keep living inside a guessing game. I waited until a decent hour. Then I picked up the phone. My hand trembled slightly as I dialed. He answered on the third ring. "Hey, Mom," he said. His voice was casual, distracted. "Michael," I said, "do you have a few minutes?" "Sure. What is up?" There was a pause on my end. I had rehearsed this in my head, but now the words felt heavier. Still, I pressed on. "I need to ask you something, and I would like you to be honest with me." His tone shifted. "Okay." I took a breath. "Have I done something to upset you and Jenny?" Silence. It stretched too long. Then he said, "Why would you think that?" "Because," I said, "things have changed. I feel it. You visit less. You speak to me differently. I am not invited to things. Jenny avoids me. And when I do show up, I feel like I am interrupting something." Another silence. I could hear him breathing. I waited. Finally, he said, "It is not like that, Mom. We are just really busy." I closed my eyes. I understand being busy, but busy people still show love. They still reach out. They still care. He sighed. "Look, I think sometimes you take things too personally." I felt a quiet ache in my chest. "So you are saying, it is my fault I feel this way?" "No. I am saying, we are adults now. Things are different. We have our own lives." "Yes," I said softly. "And I never wanted to be in the way of that. I only ever wanted to feel like I was still part of it." He was quiet again. I continued. "Do you know how it felt when you did not invite me inside the other day? When Jenny closed the door so quickly? When you looked at me like I was a stranger?" He did not respond. I stared down at the table, at a small crack in the wood I had never noticed before. "Michael," I said gently, "I have always supported you. I have always been there. I have never asked for much. But lately, I feel like I am only contacted when you need something." "That is not true," he said quickly. "Then tell me the truth," I said. "Do you still want me in your life? Or am I just a responsibility you are trying to manage? I could hear emotion in my own voice. I did not want to sound dramatic. I did not want to make him feel guilty. I only wanted the truth. I do not know what to say, he said. That says a lot, I replied. He exhaled. Look, maybe we have been distant, but it is not on purpose. We are just overwhelmed. There is a lot going on. Finances, work, planning things. Yes, I said, quietly. But not once did you ask how I was. Not once did Jenny call to say she missed me. It has been one-sided for a long time, and I am tired of pretending it feels okay. He did not deny it. He did not defend Jenny. He just said, maybe we need some space. That broke something inside me, not because he said it, but because he meant it. All right, I said. I hear you. We ended the call shortly after. I set the phone down and sat in silence. No tears came. Not yet. Just stillness. I had asked the question I had been afraid to ask, and now I had the answer. Not in the words he used, but in the words he could not say. Sometimes the hardest truth is not spoken. It is felt. It is found in the silence that follows your deepest fears. And in that silence, I knew something between us had changed. Maybe forever. After the call with Michael, something shifted inside me. It was not dramatic. It was not loud. It was quiet, like a curtain falling between two rooms. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the phone on the counter. It did not ring. Again. He did not call back. I did not expect him to. That evening I made myself a simple dinner, rice and steamed vegetables. I ate slowly, barely tasting any of it. Then I washed the dishes. I wiped the counters. I folded a towel. I opened and closed a drawer without knowing why. I kept moving because stopping felt dangerous. Because I knew that if I sat down, if I gave my mind even one moment of stillness, it would begin, and it did. That night, I lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. The room was dark, but my thoughts were not. They were bright, sharp, loud. I could not stop thinking. I thought about the past, about the day I brought Michael home from the hospital, wrapped in a blue blanket, his tiny hands curled into fists. I thought about the way he used to reach for me when he was scared, how he would cry when I left the room, even for a moment. Thought about his teenage years, how we fought sometimes but always came back together. We had been close. We had been a team. So when did that change? When did I become someone he could brush aside? When did my voice stop mattering? I turned onto my side, clutching the pillow. It felt heavy, like a stone in my arms. The words from our phone call echoed in my head. Maybe we need some space. Space. That word felt like a wall. And I was standing on the wrong side of it. I began to replay everything over and over. Every short text. Every missed birthday call. Every time Jenny looked past me like I was not even in the room. And most of all, that night at the restaurant. The night they made me wait in the car. I saw it again. The way Michael had looked at me. How Jenny had closed the door so quickly, her heels clicking on the pavement. I remembered sitting in the dark car, the glow of the dashboard lights painting my face in blue. I had waited there like a stranger, like a driver, not a mother. Blinked hard in the dark, trying not to cry. But the tears came anyway, not the loud kind, not the sobbing kind. Just slow, steady drops. Like rain that no one hears, I cried, because I felt forgotten. I cried because I had given so much. And now, I felt like I had nothing left to give. I cried because I loved him. And it hurt so much to feel like that love was no longer needed. The next day, I was quiet. I went through the motions, fed the cat, watered the plants, sorted the mail, but I was not really there. I kept thinking about what I could have done differently. Did I talk too much? Did I ask for too little? Was I too soft? Too strong? I questioned everything. I even caught myself wondering if I had imagined it all. Maybe I had been too sensitive. Maybe I had misread the signs. But no. The pain was real. And it did not come from nowhere. It came from patterns, from silence, from glances that held no warmth. That night, I sat by the window again. The moon was full, shining through the trees. I watched it slowly move across the sky. I wrapped myself in a blanket and whispered into the night. Why does it hurt more when it comes from your own child? There was no answer. Only the soft sound of wind through the leaves. I wanted to sleep. I needed to sleep. But sleep would not come, because I could not stop thinking. And when your heart is full of unanswered questions, sleep is the last thing that stays. So I waited for morning, not because I believed things would be better, but because the darkness was too loud, and I needed at least a little light to find my way back to myself. The days after that restless night were heavy. I carried a quiet pain inside me. It was not the kind of pain that makes you shout or cry out loud. It was a soft, aching feeling, like a dull weight resting on my chest. I went through my daily routine, but something had changed. Everything felt different. I noticed it most when I was alone, when the house was still, when the noise of the day had faded. Those were the moments the pain came back. I would sit by the window and watch the rain fall softly on the garden. The drops made small circles in the puddles, slow, steady, gentle. They reminded me of the tears I had held back, the tears I had not wanted to share. Sometimes I would close my eyes and listen to the rain. It was like the world was crying with me, and yet no one saw, no one knew. I put on a brave face during the day. I smiled when Michael called, laughed when Jenny stopped by, but inside, I was empty. There was a silence that filled the spaces between us, a silence louder than any argument. It was the silence of things left unsaid, of feelings hidden behind polite words, of love that felt distant. One afternoon I found myself sitting in the living room, holding a cup of tea. I did not want to be alone, but I did not want company either. I just wanted to feel something real. I thought about the past, about how things used to be, about the dinners we shared around the table, the stories we told, the laughter that filled the room. I missed that. I missed feeling close. But now, those memories felt like echoes from another life. I sighed and looked down at my hands. They were older than I remembered. The lines on my skin told stories I was not ready to share. Stories of love, of loss, of quiet pain. I thought about the day. Michael told me we might need space. Those words echoed again. Space. I wondered what kind of space he meant. Was it distance? Was it silence? I felt a tear slip down my cheek. I wiped it away quickly. I did not want anyone to see. I wanted to be strong. But strength felt far away. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I whispered to myself, "This pain will not last forever." I repeated it like a prayer, because I needed to believe it. I needed to hold on to hope. Hope that one day, things would be different. Hope that love would find its way back. That night, I stayed up late again. But this time, I did not stare at the ceiling. I sat by the window with a notebook. I wrote down my thoughts, not to make sense of them, but to let them go. I wrote about my fears, my sadness, my hopes. I wrote about the woman I wanted to become, the woman who would find peace, who would find joy again. As I wrote, the pain did not disappear, but it softened, like the rain washing the earth, like a quiet song in the dark. I closed the notebook and looked outside. The sky was clear. The moon was full and bright. I felt a small warmth inside me, a gentle light. It was the first time in weeks I felt this way. I smiled softly, not because the pain was gone, but because I was still here, still standing, still fighting. And that was enough for now. The silence between Michael and me grew heavier with each passing day. I could no longer carry the weight of uncertainty in my heart. I needed an answer. I needed to know where I stood. Was I still a part of his life? Or was I just someone he tolerated? One afternoon, I decided to call him again. My fingers hesitated over the phone. I felt nervous, afraid of what I might hear, but I knew I could not wait any longer. I pressed the call button. The phone rang once, twice, and then Michael answered. "Hello, Mom," he said. His voice was calm but distant. I took a deep breath. "Michael, I need to talk." "Okay," he replied. "What is it?" I spoke slowly and clearly. "I need to know the truth. Do you want me in your life or not?" There was a pause, a long one. Then he said, "I do want you in my life, but it is complicated." I felt my heart beat faster. "Complicated how?" I asked gently. He sighed. "There are things going on, things you do not know about." I swallowed hard. "I want to understand." Michael hesitated, then said, "It is about the business, the debts, the pressure." I listened carefully. He continued, "I have been struggling, Mom, more than I let on." That explained some things. The distance, the silence, the avoidance. But it did not explain everything. "Why did you not tell me?" I asked softly. "Because I did not want to worry you." I felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that he trusted me enough to share. Sadness that he had carried the burden alone. I took a moment to calm myself. "Michael, you do not have to face this alone. We are family." He was quiet. Then he said, "I know. And I am sorry for pushing you away." I felt tears welling up. "I forgive you," I said. "I just want us to be honest with each other." Michael agreed. We talked for a while longer. I told him how much I missed him, how much I wanted to be there for him. He promised to try. But even as we spoke, I knew things would not be easy. There were many challenges ahead. I hung up the phone and sat back in my chair. A quiet pain returned. Not from the conversation, but from the knowledge that trust takes time to rebuild, that love needs space to grow. I reminded myself to be patient, to give Michael the time he needed, but most of all, to be kind to myself, because I deserved kindness too. Later that evening, I found myself walking slowly through the garden. The flowers were still blooming despite the cold. They reminded me of resilience, of beauty even in hard times. I reached out and touched a soft petal. It felt delicate but strong. Like me. I whispered to the night, I am still here. I am still hopeful. The stars above twinkled gently, as if answering me. The next day, I decided to write in my journal. I wrote about the phone call, about the feelings it brought up, about the hope and the fear. Writing helped me sort through the emotions. It helped me find peace in the chaos. Closed the journal and looked out the window. The world was still moving, still changing, and so was I. I was learning to face the truth, to face the pain, and to find strength in both. That night, I fell asleep with a quiet heart. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had taken a step forward, a step toward healing, toward love, toward myself. Days passed slowly after my conversation with Michael. I kept hoping that things would start to change, that the silence between us would slowly turn into words. But instead, I felt a growing distance, a quiet space filled with questions I could not answer. Then one afternoon, the truth finally came to light. Michael invited me over to his small apartment. I was nervous. My heart was pounding as I walked up the stairs. I did not know what to expect. Would he be angry? Sad? Would he even want to see me? When I arrived, he opened the door with a tired smile. His eyes looked heavy, as if he had not slept for days. "Come in," he said quietly. I stepped inside. The room was small and cluttered, but it was his space. It told stories of long nights and hard work. I saw papers scattered on the table, bills stacked in one corner, and a half-empty coffee cup. Michael sat down and took a deep breath. "Mom, I need to be honest with you," he said. I nodded, trying to stay calm. He began to tell me everything. The business he had started after college was failing. The debts were mounting. The pressure from the bank was intense. He had tried to fix things alone, but it was too much. "I did not want to worry you," he said. "I thought I could handle it." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. The man I loved, my son, had been suffering in silence. "I should have told you," he added. "I was wrong to shut you out." I reached for his hand. It was warm, but trembling. "Michael, you never have to face anything alone," I said softly. "We are family. We help each other." He looked at me, eyes filled with regret. "I know," he whispered, "and I am sorry." For a moment we just sat there, holding hands in the quiet room. Then he told me something that surprised me. I think I need help," he said. That was a brave thing to say. He was asking for support, not just from me, but from professionals who could guide him through the tough times. I nodded, proud of his honesty. Together, we made a plan. He would meet with a financial advisor and a counselor. I promised to be there for him every step of the way. That day, I understood something important. I understood that love is not only about happiness. It is also about pain, about facing hard truths, about being there when the other person falls. Sometimes, love means walking through the storm together, not running away. As I left Michael's apartment, I felt lighter. Not because the problems were solved, but because we had taken the first step, together. That evening, I sat by the window, watching the stars appear one by one. I thought about the journey ahead. It would be difficult. There would be setbacks. But there would also be hope. Hope that we could heal. Hope that trust could be rebuilt. Hope that love could grow stronger. I whispered to myself, I finally understand. And for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face whatever came next. The days after Michael's confession were a mixture of relief and uncertainty. I felt closer to him than I had in months, but the weight of his problems was still heavy in the air between us. I wanted to help, to fix everything, yet I also felt a growing weariness inside me, a quiet voice telling me to protect myself too. I realized that sometimes love means knowing when to step back. One afternoon, after a long talk with a close friend, I made a decision. I needed space. Not because I stopped loving Michael, not because I wanted to give up, but because I had to find strength within myself first. I told Michael gently, I think I need some time to breathe. He looked surprised but nodded slowly. I understand, he said. It was the hardest thing to say, and hear. Walking away did not mean I was abandoning him. It meant I was taking care of my heart. The first days felt strange. The house was too quiet. The rooms felt empty without his presence. I missed him. But I also noticed a new feeling, a small sense of freedom, a space to think, to heal. I started to spend more time alone. I took long walks, in the park, watching the trees sway in the gentle breeze. I sat on a bench by the lake, watching ducks glide over the water. Nature reminded me that life moves forward, that seasons change, that pain does not last forever. At night, I often sat by the window, drinking tea and listening to the city's distant sounds. Sometimes tears came quietly. I let them fall. They cleansed my soul. Slowly, I learned to sit with my feelings, to accept the sadness, the anger, and the hope all at once. One evening, Michael called. His voice was soft, almost hesitant. How are you? I answered, honestly. I am learning, taking one day at a time. We talked for a while. About small things, about memories, about dreams. It was a gentle connection, not heavy with problems. I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, someday, we could rebuild. But I knew the road would be long. I had to protect my heart until I was ready to fully trust again. I spent more time with my friend Sarah. She listened without judgment. She gave me space to cry and laugh. She reminded me that I was not alone. One afternoon, she said something that stayed with me. Sometimes, walking away is the bravest thing you can do, I thought about those words. How often I had thought staying meant strength. But now I understood. Strength also means knowing when to let go, when to step back, to heal. I began writing again. My journal became a place of honesty. Wrote about my fears and my dreams, about the woman I wanted to be, about the love I still carried for Michael, and about the new love I was learning to give myself. The days passed. Some were easier than others. Some brought old pain rushing back. But with each day, I felt a little stronger, a little more whole. I remembered who I was before all this pain, a woman who had faced challenges and come through, a woman with courage, a woman with hope. One morning, as I sat with my tea, I realized something important. I was not running away from love. I was walking toward myself, toward healing, toward peace. And that was a powerful choice. The quiet pain that once filled me was still there sometimes. But it was no longer the only feeling I knew. I had found a new kind of strength, a strength born from pain and hope, from love and loss. I looked out the window and smiled softly, because I knew the journey was far from over. But I was ready to walk forward, ready to face whatever came next. Even though I had taken steps to protect myself, the pain did not simply disappear. It stayed with me like a shadow that followed every move I made. It was a quiet ache in my chest, a heaviness in my heart that no amount of breathing exercises or long walks could fully lift. Some days the pain was sharp and sudden. It caught me off guard when I least expected it. A song on the radio, a scent in the air, or even just the silence of the house would bring it rushing back. It reminded me that healing was not a straight path. It was messy, slow, and sometimes cruel. I found myself waking up in the middle of the night, my thoughts spinning in circles. Memories of better times with Michael mixed with moments of confusion and hurt. I wondered if he felt this pain too, or if I was the only one left holding it. During those restless nights, I would sit quietly on the edge of my bed. The moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows on the walls. I did not try to push the feelings away anymore. Instead, I let them be. I told myself it was okay to feel sad. It was okay to miss what was lost. The days blurred together. Sometimes I felt numb, as if my heart had gone into hiding. Other times I felt angry. Angry at the situation, at Michael, and even at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. The pain was a complicated companion, changing its face but never leaving. One afternoon I found myself standing in front of Michael's old car, the one they had insisted I wait in during that dinner, the car that now symbolized so much hurt. I traced my fingers along the cold metal. I remembered the loneliness of that night, the way I felt invisible, like my presence did not matter. Tears welled in my eyes. I whispered to the empty street, "Why did it have to be this way?" The answer did not come. But in that moment, I realized something important. The pain was a part of my story now. It had shaped me. It had changed me. I could not erase it, but I could learn from it. I started to write again, this time with more honesty. I wrote about the nights filled with tears, about the silence between Michael and me, about the hopes I still held on to, even when they felt fragile. Writing became a way to speak to myself, to face the pain instead of hiding from it. Sometimes I would read old letters and messages from Michael. I saw the love that had once been there, the dreams we had shared. It hurt to see how far we had drifted, but it also reminded me that love is not always perfect. It is human. It is flawed. I reached out to Sarah one evening. "I am struggling," I told her. She listened patiently. Then she said something that stayed with me. "Pain is a shadow that follows us, but it does not have to control us." Her words were simple but true. I began to understand that healing was not about forgetting. It was about learning to live with the pain, to carry it with grace, to let it make me stronger, not weaker. One morning, as I stood by the kitchen window, I caught my reflection in the glass. I saw a woman who had been broken, but was still standing. A woman who had faced storms and had not been swept away. I smiled softly. The pain was still there. But so was hope. So was courage. So was love. For myself, for Michael, and for the life I was determined to build. The road ahead would not be easy, but I was ready to keep walking, step by step, day by day, with the pain as a quiet companion, but not the only one. There are moments when the past visits me like a gentle breeze, soft but impossible to ignore. It slips through the cracks of my mind, filling the quiet spaces with memories. Sometimes it feels like a warm hug. Other times, it feels like a sharp sting. I miss the past. I miss the days when Michael and I laughed together without worry, when the future felt full of promise and light. Those were simpler times. Or so I thought. I remember one afternoon in particular. The sun was shining, and the garden was blooming with bright colors. Michael and I sat on the porch, sharing a cup of tea. We talked about his dreams, about the business he wanted to build. His eyes sparkled with hope. I felt proud of him, proud of us. Back then, I thought those moments would last forever, but life does not always keep its promises. Now, when I look back, those memories feel like fragile glass, beautiful, but easily broken. I miss the way Michael used to call me from work just to say hello. The way he would share little jokes that made me smile. The way he trusted me with his fears and dreams. I miss feeling needed, feeling loved, feeling part of something. Sometimes the pain of missing the past is like a quiet echo inside me. It reminds me of what I have lost, but also of what I once had. I find myself flipping through old photo albums. The pages are filled with smiles frozen in time. Birthdays, holidays, simple family dinners. I see the faces of friends and relatives who were part of our story. Looking at those pictures, I feel a mix of joy and sorrow. Joy for the happy times, sorrow for how distant they seem now. It is strange how the past can feel both close and far, away at the same time. One evening, I sat in my favorite chair, holding a worn photograph of Michael as a boy. His face was full of innocence and hope. I traced the lines with my finger, feeling a sudden wave of tenderness. "Where did the time go?" I whispered. The past is a teacher, but it is also a thief. It takes away moments that we can never get back. It reminds us of who we were and who we have become. I try not to live in the past. I know I must keep moving forward. But sometimes, I need to pause to feel the ache of missing, to remember the love that shaped me. One day, I met with Sarah at a small cafe. Over warm cups of coffee, I shared my feelings. "I miss the past so much," I said softly. "It feels like a part of me is gone." Sarah reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I understand," she said. "Missing the past means you had something real and beautiful. It means you cared deeply." Her words comforted me. They reminded me that missing is not a weakness. It is a sign of the heart's capacity to love. Sometimes I imagine what life would be like if things were different. If Michael had told me sooner. If we had faced the challenges together from the start. If trust had not broken. But these thoughts can trap me in sadness. So I try to bring myself back to the present. To the small joys of today. A sunrise breaking through the clouds. The sound of birds singing in the morning. A kind word from a neighbor. These moments remind me that life continues. That new memories are waiting to be made. I am learning to hold the past gently, not to cling too tightly, not to let it stop me from living. It is like carrying a small treasure in my pocket, always there, sometimes shining brightly, sometimes hidden beneath layers of pain, but never forgotten. The past shaped me. It made me who I am. And while I miss it deeply, I also feel grateful. Grateful for the love I experienced, for the lessons learned, for the strength to keep going. As I close the photo album and set it aside, I take a deep breath. I know that missing the past is part of healing. It means I am human. It means I am still capable of feeling deeply. And that, I think, is a gift. In the quiet moments when my heart felt heavy, I realized I needed someone to talk to. Not just anyone. Someone who could listen without judgment. Someone who understood the kind of pain I carried inside. That someone was Sarah. Sarah and I had been friends for many years. She was the kind of person who made you feel safe. Her calm voice and gentle eyes had a way of soothing even the deepest fears. When I called her one afternoon, my voice barely steady, she answered right away, "I am struggling," I said simply. Her pause was brief, but full of understanding. "Tell me everything," she said. We met at our favorite cafe, a small place, with soft music playing and the smell of fresh coffee in the air. I felt nervous as I sat down across from her, unsure where to begin. But Sarah's warm smile encouraged me to open up. I started by sharing how lonely I felt after I walked away from Michael. I talked about the pain that still stayed, the nights I cried quietly, and the confusing feelings I could not explain. As I spoke, Sarah listened carefully, nodding and sometimes reaching out to hold my hand. "It is okay to feel this way," she said gently. "Healing is not a straight line. You will have good days and bad days." Her words felt like a balm to my soul. For the first time in a long while, I did not feel alone with my sadness. I told her about the moments when I missed the past, the laughter we shared, the dreams we built, and the love I still carried for Michael. Sarah did not try to fix things or offer advice right away. She simply held space for my feelings. "Sometimes it helps just to be heard," she said softly. As we talked, I found myself reflecting on my own strength. Sarah reminded me that walking away from a painful situation takes courage. It is not giving up. It is protecting your heart. "You are stronger than you think," she said. Do not forget that. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe I could heal and find peace again. But fear still lingered. Fear that the pain would never fully leave. Fear that I would be alone forever. Sarah saw this in my eyes. It is okay to be afraid, she said. Fear shows that you care deeply. It means you are human. She shared her own stories of struggle and healing, times when she felt lost, but found her way back to hope. Her honesty gave me comfort. It made me feel less isolated. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the people pass by outside the window. The world moved on, full of noise and life, while inside me, a quiet change was beginning. Talking to Sarah was a turning point. It helped me see that I did not have to carry my pain alone, that sharing my story was a step toward healing. After our conversation, I started to reach out more. I called old friends, joined a book club, and even went to a yoga class. Each small step helped me feel connected again. I also began to listen to myself more deeply. I learned to recognize when I needed rest and when I needed to be gentle with my feelings. I stopped rushing the healing process. One day, Sarah said to me, "Healing is like a garden. It takes time to grow flowers again, but with care, they will bloom." I liked that image. I imagined my heart as that garden, fragile but full of potential. I promised myself to care for it every day, to give it patience, love, and hope. Slowly, I noticed changes inside me. The sharp edges of pain softened. The heavy clouds of sadness began to part. I started to feel moments of joy again. A smile came more easily. A laugh felt genuine. I was not whole yet, but I was healing, and that was enough, for now. That evening, as I walked home, I thought about the journey ahead. It would not be easy. There would be days when the pain returned. Days when I questioned everything. But I knew I had support. I knew I had strength. I knew I had hope. And that was a beginning. I looked up at the stars twinkling above, feeling a quiet peace. Because sometimes, the best way forward is to reach out your hand and let someone walk beside you. Saying goodbye was not easy. It was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. But I knew deep inside that it was necessary for my own peace and growth. I had to let go of Michael, of our past, and of the dreams we once shared. I remember the day clearly. The air was cool and crisp, and the sun was low in the sky. I stood in the living room where so many memories had been made. The walls seemed to hold echoes of laughter, arguments, and quiet moments we had shared. It was strange to feel both comfort and sadness in the same space. I looked around and thought about how much had changed, how different things were now. The house felt empty, but the weight of everything still hung heavily on my shoulders. I picked up my phone and sent Michael a message. It was not long, just a few simple words. "I need to say goodbye." I waited, but there was no answer. I did not expect one. This goodbye was not about reopening old wounds or asking for explanations. It was about closing a chapter. For myself. That night, I sat by the window and watched the stars appear one by one. The silence was deep, but it was also freeing. I allowed myself to cry, not out of sadness alone, but also from relief. Relief that I was taking control of my life again. relief that I was choosing peace. The next days were filled with quiet rituals. I packed away old photos and letters. I deleted messages that kept pulling me back into pain. Each small act was like a brick removed from the heavy wall around my heart. Saying goodbye was not just about Michael. It was about saying goodbye to a part of myself that I no longer needed. The part that hoped too much. The part that stayed silent when I should have spoken up. The part that believed things could always be fixed with time. I thought about the future. It was uncertain and unknown, but it was mine. I could shape it. I called Sarah and told her what I had done. "You are very brave," she said. "Goodbyes are not easy, but they open the door to new beginnings." Her words gave me strength. I started to see that goodbye was not the end. It was a step forward. Sometimes, I caught myself thinking about Michael, wondering if he felt the same pain, if he missed what we had. But I reminded myself that healing was my journey. It was not about him. I learned to be gentle with myself, to forgive the mistakes and accept the imperfections. One morning, I found a letter I had written to Michael long ago, but never sent. Reading it now, I felt a mixture of sadness and closure. It was full of hope and love, but also honesty. I folded the letter carefully and put it away. It was time to let go. There were moments when the goodbye felt like a wound still open. But over time, the edges began to heal. I took long walks in the park, letting the fresh air fill my lungs. I watched children play and elderly couples walk hand in hand. Life continued around me, full of simple beauty. I started to find joy in small things again. A warm cup of tea, a favorite song, a quiet afternoon with a good book. These little moments reminded me that life was still good, even after loss. Saying goodbye gave me a sense of freedom I had not felt in a long time. I was no longer chained to the past. I was no longer waiting for something that would not come. I was free to be myself, to grow, to dream again. That freedom felt like a soft light inside me, growing brighter every day. I still carried memories of Michael and our life together. But they were no longer chains. They were lessons. I was learning to live with them without letting them control me. Goodbye was a promise to myself, a promise to protect my heart, to value my own happiness, to choose hope over fear. That day, I did not just say goodbye to a person. I said goodbye to pain, to doubt, and to silence. I said hello to a new chapter, one filled with courage, strength, and love, especially love for myself. After I said goodbye, a new reality settled over me. I was alone now. Not in the way that made my heart ache or filled me with fear, but in a quiet, calm way. Alone in the sense that I was responsible for myself, for my feelings, and for the next steps I would take. The first few days felt strange. The house was too quiet, and the silence was heavy. I was used to the sounds of Michael's footsteps, his voice, the small noises of daily life with someone else. Now, there was only my own breathing, the ticking of the clock, and the occasional creak of the floorboards. At first, the loneliness tried to overwhelm me. I caught myself reaching for the phone, wanting to call him or anyone who might fill the empty space. But then, I stopped. I realized that this alone time was not a punishment or a prison. It was a gift. I was finally free to be myself without hiding behind smiles or pretending everything was fine. Alone meant I could listen to my own thoughts and feelings. I could breathe deeply and let my heart heal at its own pace. I started to notice things I had not seen before. The way sunlight fell across the living room in the morning, the soft rustle of leaves outside my window, the calm rhythm of my own footsteps as I moved through the house. These small moments became anchors that helped me stay present. Being alone also gave me space to reflect. I thought about who I was before all the pain, before the heartbreak. I remembered the dreams I had once held close, the passions I had pushed aside to keep peace. Slowly, I began to find those pieces of myself again. I wrote in my journal every day. Sometimes I wrote about the sadness and the anger. Other times, I wrote about hope and the future I wanted to build. Writing helped me understand my emotions better. It was like talking to a friend who would never judge or interrupt. I also found comfort in simple routines. Making tea in the morning, watering the plants, going for walks in the park. These little acts gave me a sense of control and normalcy. They reminded me that life went on, and so would I. There were moments when the loneliness felt like a heavy cloud. Days when I wished for a kind word or a gentle touch. But I learned to hold myself with kindness during those times. I reminded myself that feeling alone sometimes was natural and temporary. I also reached out to people who cared. Friends like Sarah became important anchors. We talked about everything, not just the pain, but also the small joys, the funny moments, and the plans for the future. These connections helped me remember that I was never truly alone. One evening, I sat on the porch watching the stars. The sky was clear and vast, and I felt a deep peace. I whispered to myself, "I am here. I am enough." The words felt true, even if just for that moment. Being alone taught me about strength. Not the kind of strength that comes from fighting or proving something to others, but the quiet, steady strength that grows when you accept yourself fully, even with all your flaws and fears. I was learning to trust myself again, to believe that I could face whatever came next, that I could find happiness, not because someone else gave it to me, but because I chose it for myself. The journey was not easy. Some days, the weight of loneliness was hard to bear. But with each passing day, the cloud lifted a little more. I began to see my alone time as a chance to rediscover joy. I started to explore old hobbies, reading novels, painting, and even cooking new recipes. These activities brought a spark of life back into my days. I was surprised by how much I could enjoy my own company. I laughed at my own jokes, sang quietly to songs I loved, and danced alone in the kitchen without caring who saw. Being alone gave me space to heal, but it also gave me freedom. Freedom to choose who I wanted to be, without fear or doubt. I realized that being alone was not the same as being lonely. Alone was a state of being. Lonely was a feeling I could accept and move through. I decided to be patient with myself, to allow time for the pain to soften and the light to return. I was not the woman I used to be. I was stronger, wiser, and more aware of my own needs. And I was learning to love myself in a new way. The road ahead was still unknown, but I was no longer afraid. I was ready to walk it on my own 2 feet, with my heart open and my spirit hopeful. Because sometimes, being alone is the first step toward finding the deepest kind of peace. I am not the same woman I was before. That fact sits with me every day, quietly but firmly. It is not something I say with regret. It is something I say with honesty and growing strength. Change is often slow and almost invisible, But once it has happened, it cannot be undone. I have felt that change inside me. It is like the steady flow of a river, shaping the stones beneath it. I remember when I first realized this. I was standing in front of the mirror one morning, looking at my reflection. The face staring back was familiar, but something was different in my eyes. They looked clearer, stronger, more certain. For a long time, I had been afraid to admit this change. I wanted to hold on to who I was, the woman who believed in love, who hoped for happy endings. But I knew that person was not the whole story. I had grown, and that growth had taken me to a new place. I am more cautious now, yes. I have learned to protect my heart in ways I never thought I would need to. But I am also more open. Open to new possibilities, new experiences, and most importantly, new truths about myself. I think about the mistakes I made, the things I did not see, and the ways I let others define me. It is not easy to look back on those times without feeling some pain or disappointment. But I have learned to see those moments as lessons, not failures. I am learning to forgive myself, to understand that I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. That is an important part of being not the same. With change comes wisdom. I have learned to listen to my instincts more, to trust my feelings even when they are confusing or uncomfortable. I know now that my voice matters, not just the words I say, but the feelings I carry inside. I used to avoid conflict because I was afraid it would break me. Now I see that facing difficult truths, even when it hurts, is part of healing. It is part of becoming stronger. I am more patient with myself too. I understand that healing is not a straight path. Some days feel like steps forward. Other days feel like steps backward. Both are okay. I am discovering new parts of myself that I had forgotten or ignored. There is a quiet confidence that comes from surviving hard times. It is not loud or proud, but steady and sure. I feel this confidence in the way I hold myself, in the decisions I make, and in the way I speak. It surprises me sometimes how much power I have gained without even trying. My relationships with others have changed too. I am more careful about who I allow close. I do not need to please everyone anymore. I know my worth, and I expect to be treated with respect. I have started to set boundaries, gentle but firm lines that protect my peace. Saying no when something does not feel right is no longer a source of guilt. It is an act of self-care. This change has made me more compassionate, not just to others, but to myself. I see now that everyone carries pain and struggles. I try to be kind, even when it is difficult. I still feel sadness sometimes. I miss the past and the dreams I once had. But I do not let those feelings define me. They are part of my story, but they are not all of it. I am learning to live in the present, to find joy in small moments, to be grateful for the simple blessings of each day. This new me is quieter in some ways but louder in others. I speak up more for myself. I share my feelings with trusted friends. I do not hide behind smiles or silence. Sometimes, I wonder what others think when they see me now. Do they notice the change? Do they understand it? It does not matter as much as it used to. What matters is that I see it, I feel it, I live it. Being not the same means I am growing. I am evolving into the person I was always meant to be. There is a freedom in that, a release from old fears and doubts. I am ready to embrace this new chapter with open arms, to keep learning, growing, and healing. I do not know what the future holds, but I face it with courage. Because I am not the same, and that is a beautiful thing. There was a moment one evening when I noticed a small light shining in the distance. It was not a bright or overwhelming light, but a soft, gentle glow. It caught my attention in the quietness of the night, and somehow it felt like a sign. For many weeks before that night, I had felt like I was walking through darkness. Not the darkness of fear or despair, but the darkness of uncertainty and waiting. I was not sure where my life was going, or what the future might hold. I was learning to live alone with my thoughts and feelings, and sometimes those thoughts were heavy. But that small light reminded me that even in the darkest times, there is always hope. A tiny spark that can grow into something strong and beautiful. I remember sitting on my porch, wrapped in a soft blanket, watching the stars. The night was calm, and the air was cool. I took a deep breath and let the silence wash over me. Then, far away, I saw that small light flicker gently. It was like a candle in a window, a symbol of warmth and welcome. I thought about how sometimes all we need is a little light to guide us forward. That night, I realized I was ready to take a small step toward a new beginning. Not a big leap or a sudden change, but a quiet, careful step. I started to think about what that step could be. Maybe it was calling an old friend, or trying a new hobby, or simply going for a walk in a new part of town. The idea of moving forward felt both exciting and scary. I knew I could not rush the process, but I also knew I could not stay still forever. Over the next few days, I paid attention to the small lights in my life, the smile of a stranger, the warmth of the sun on my face, the sound of birds singing in the morning. These little moments became my anchors. I also began to imagine a future where I felt happiness again. Not the happiness that depends on someone else, but the happiness that comes from within. I pictured myself walking confidently, feeling free and whole. I saw myself surrounded by friends who cared and supported me. I saw myself doing things that made my heart sing. These images gave me hope, even when the present felt difficult. I knew that the path would not be easy. Healing takes time, and there are always challenges along the way. But the small light reminded me that I am not alone. There is always a way forward, even if it is not clear right now. I started to listen more to my inner voice, that quiet part of me that knows what is best. I began to trust my feelings again, even when they were confusing. Sometimes I felt afraid to hope. I worried that I would be disappointed or hurt again. But I told myself that hope is not a weakness. It is a brave choice to believe in better days. One afternoon, I found an old notebook and began to write. I wrote about my dreams, my fears, and the small light I had seen. Writing helped me feel more connected to myself and my journey. I also made a promise to myself to be patient and kind, to allow time for the small light to grow, to take one step at a time. That promise gave me strength. I began to notice changes in myself. I felt lighter in my heart, more willing to smile and laugh. I found joy in simple things: a cup of tea, a good book, a phone call with a friend. I even started to plan a small trip to the countryside, somewhere quiet and peaceful. The thought of being surrounded by nature, away from the noise and stress, felt healing. The small light had opened a door. It was not a door to a perfect life, but to a life where I could find peace and happiness again. I know there will be hard days ahead. Days when the light seems far away or too dim to see. But I also know that I have the strength to keep walking, because sometimes all it takes is a small light to guide you through the darkness. And for the first time in a long time, I feel ready to follow that light. Starting again is never easy. It feels like standing at the edge of a wide river, unsure how deep it is or how strong the current might be. But I knew, deep inside, that I had to cross that river. I had to begin again. After the small light I saw, something shifted in me. A quiet courage began to grow. It was not loud or sudden. It was a gentle whisper saying, "You can do this." I decided to make small changes, simple steps to build a new life. It was not about forgetting the past, but about moving forward with hope. The first thing I did was create a new routine. My days had felt heavy before, filled with worry and sadness. Now, I wanted to fill them with purpose and peace. I started waking up earlier. The mornings are quiet then, peaceful and still. I would sit by the window with a cup of tea and watch the sun rise. It felt like a small miracle, a new day, fresh and full of possibilities. After that, I began to take care of myself in ways I had forgotten. I cooked healthy meals, went for gentle walks, and read books that made me think and feel alive. These things may sound small, but they were important. Self-care is not selfish. It is the foundation of healing. I had learned that I needed to be kind to myself before I could be kind to others. I also reached out to friends. I had kept many people at a distance during the hardest times, but now I sent messages, made phone calls, and accepted invitations to meet. Some friendships felt different. Some people had changed and some had not. That was okay. I was learning to choose who I wanted to keep close and who I needed to let go. Starting again meant learning new boundaries. It meant saying no to things that did not serve my peace and yes to things that brought joy. At work, I found new energy. I focused on projects that excited me. I allowed myself to dream again about the future. It was not always easy. There were days when the weight of old memories felt heavy, when loneliness crept in and whispered doubts, when fear tried to stop me. But I reminded myself that healing is a journey, not a destination. Some days will be harder than others. That is natural. I kept a journal, writing about my feelings, my hopes, and my fears. Writing helped me see my progress. It helped me understand my heart. One day, I decided to try something I had always wanted to do. I joined a yoga class. The slow movements and deep breathing helped me connect to my body and calm my mind. It was a small step, but it gave me strength. I also began to explore new hobbies. I took a painting class at a community center. I was not good at it, but I loved the colors and the chance to create something beautiful. These new activities reminded me that life has many ways to heal and grow. It is never too late to try. At home, I made small changes to my space. I rearranged the furniture, added fresh flowers, and opened the windows to let in the sunlight. My home became a place of comfort and peace. I noticed that my smile came more often. My laughter returned in small moments. I felt more present. I even started to dream again about love. Not the kind of love I had lost, but a new kind. One that respects and cherishes me. Beginning again means accepting the past, but not letting it control the future. It means forgiving myself for mistakes and believing in my worth. It means trusting that I can create a life that is full and meaningful. Each day, I choose to take one more step forward. It may be small, but it is mine. I do not know exactly where this path will lead. There may be challenges ahead, but I am ready to face them, because I have found a new strength inside me, a strength born from pain, hope, and the courage to begin again. And that is a beautiful beginning. I did not expect it to happen so soon. After all the pain, all the silence, and all the distance, he tried to come back into my life. It was not something I was ready for, but it happened anyway. It began with a message, a simple text that said, "Can we talk?" I stared at my phone for a long time, my heart pounding. Part of me wanted to delete the message right away. Another part of me wanted to reply, to hear his voice, to understand why. I did not answer that day. Instead, I sat, quietly, thinking about everything that had passed between us, the hurt, the betrayal, the long nights of wondering what had gone wrong. He was the one who made me wait in the car during dinner, the one who chose others over me, the one who ignored my feelings when I needed him most. How could he come back, now, expecting everything to be the same? But the message stayed in my mind. I kept reading it over and over. What did he want to say? Was he sorry? Did he want forgiveness? Or was he just lonely? The next day, I received another message. This time it was a little longer. He said he missed me, that he was sorry for the pain he caused, that he wanted a chance to make things right. I felt a flood of emotions, sadness, anger, confusion, and something like hope. But I was careful not to let that hope grow too big. I decided to meet him in a public place, a small cafe where we used to go. I wanted to see him, to hear his words, but I also wanted to protect myself. When I saw him, my heart tightened. He looked different. Older maybe, or just more tired. There was a sadness in his eyes that I had not seen before. He did not speak, at first. We sat quietly, sipping our coffee. The silence was heavy, but not uncomfortable. Then, he began to talk. He told me about his mistakes, the things he had done wrong, how he had been selfish and blind, how he had lost sight of what really mattered. His voice was soft, full of regret. I listened carefully, feeling a mix of emotions inside. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think that people can change, that love can heal wounds. But I also knew that words are easy to say. Actions are what truly matter. I asked him why he had made me wait in the car that night, why he had ignored my feelings and chosen others over me. He looked down and said he did not have a good answer. He said he was sorry, but he knew that might not be enough. That honesty touched me, but it did not erase the pain. I told him that I needed time, that healing takes more than apologies, that trust must be rebuilt slowly, with care and respect. He nodded and said he understood. He said he was willing to wait, to prove himself if I gave him the chance. I left the cafe feeling mixed emotions. Part of me wanted to close the door forever. Another part wanted to leave it open, just a little. In the days that followed, I thought a lot about what I wanted, what I needed, what was best for my heart. I remembered the pain of feeling ignored and unimportant, the nights spent crying alone, the quiet strength I had built inside myself. I knew that letting him back in would not be easy. It would require courage and patience. It would mean risking more hurt. But I also knew that I was not the same woman I was before. I had grown. I had learned to value myself. I decided to take things slowly, to listen to my heart, but also to my mind, to set clear boundaries and protect my peace. He respected that. He did not pressure me or rush me. He simply showed up with kindness and sincerity. Sometimes we talked for hours. Sometimes we sat in silence. Sometimes we laughed like we used to. I felt hope flicker again, small but real. Yet, I also kept my guard up. I remembered the lessons of the past. I reminded myself that love is not only about words, but about actions and respect. This time, I chose myself first. I chose my healing. I chose the small light inside me that had begun to shine again, and I decided that whatever happened next, I would not lose myself again. When he tried to come back, I knew something had changed inside me. I was not the same woman who waited silently in the car or hid her feelings to keep peace. I was different now. I had grown in ways I never expected. This difference was not something sudden or dramatic. It was quiet and deep. It was like the roots of a tree growing stronger beneath the surface, unseen but powerful. I began to see myself more clearly, my worth, my limits, and my strength. I learned that I could love, but also protect my heart. In the past, I had allowed myself to be vulnerable, but sometimes that vulnerability meant pain. I had trusted without caution. I had hoped without boundaries. Now, I understood that trust must be earned again and again. It is not a gift freely given, especially after it is broken. When we talked, I noticed that I listened differently. I did not just hear words. I paid attention to actions. I watched how he treated me, how he respected my space and feelings. I saw that he was trying, not perfectly, but honestly. That gave me hope. But I also kept my eyes open. I also learned to speak up. In the past, I stayed quiet to avoid conflict or sadness. Now, I found my voice. I said what I needed, what hurt me, and what made me happy. Sometimes, that was hard. Sometimes I felt afraid he would leave again if I was too honest. But I told myself that a relationship built on silence and fear is not healthy. I deserved honesty and respect. I began to notice small changes in myself. I smiled more easily, but also more genuinely. I laughed with less worry. I allowed myself to feel joy without guilt. I spent time alone, not out of loneliness, but because I valued my own company. I learned to enjoy quiet moments, to read, to write, to dream. I also started to forgive myself for the past. Forgiveness was not about forgetting or excusing what had happened. It was about freeing my heart from anger and pain. I realized that holding on to hurt only kept me trapped. Forgiving myself and others was a way to open a new door. One day, I looked in the mirror and saw a woman who had been through storms but still stood tall. a woman who had been broken, but was healing. That reflection gave me strength. I knew that I was not perfect. I still made mistakes, and I still felt fear sometimes. But I was learning to be gentle with myself, to accept my flaws and celebrate my progress. I also knew that I had choices. I could choose to let the past define me, or I could choose to grow beyond it. I chose growth. This choice meant saying no to things that did not serve my well-being. It meant setting boundaries with people who did not respect me. It meant walking away from situations that brought pain. It also meant being open to love again, but with caution and self-respect. I felt more confident in who I was and what I wanted. When he asked to come back, I welcomed him carefully. I did not give my heart fully right away. I watched, I listened, I felt. I wanted to make sure that this time, things would be different, that we could build something honest and strong. He showed patience. He respected my pace. That was new and important. We took small steps together. We talked about our feelings, our fears, and our hopes. We shared memories, both good and bad. I realized that being different did not mean I was cold or distant. It meant I was wiser and stronger. I was no longer afraid to love, but I was not afraid to protect myself either. I felt a new kind of peace inside me. A peace that came from knowing I was enough, just as I am. This peace gave me courage to face the future, whatever it might hold. I understood that healing is not a straight path. There are ups and downs, but each step forward is a victory. I was proud of the woman I had become. A woman who chose herself, who valued her heart, and who was ready to love with open eyes. This was my new beginning. This was my true strength. And I knew that no matter what happened next, I would never lose myself again. Choosing myself was not easy. It was a decision that took time, tears, and many quiet moments alone. But it was the most important decision I have ever made. For many years, I put others first. My family, my husband, my children. I thought that was what love meant. To give and give, even if it hurt me. But I learned the hard way that love without respect is not enough. If I do not respect myself, how can I expect others to do the same? Choosing myself meant saying no to the past that held me back, saying no to pain that kept me small, saying no to people who did not value me the way I deserved. It was a peaceful but powerful decision. I remember the morning I made this choice. The sun was just rising, and the light came softly through the window. I sat with a cup of tea, feeling calm but determined. I told myself, I will take care of my heart. I will listen to my needs. I will be my own protector. This was not selfish. It was self-love. It was the foundation of healing. Choosing myself also meant accepting that some relationships might change. Some doors would close, and that was okay. I thought about him. The man who tried to come back into my life. I cared for him once, deeply. But I knew that loving him again could only happen if he truly respected me. If he could not meet me where I was, then I had to be strong enough to walk away. I set clear boundaries for myself and for others. I learned to say no without guilt. I practiced saying, "This is not okay for me," or "I need space to heal." At first, it felt strange. I worried about hurting others or being alone. But soon, I realized that boundaries were acts of love for myself and love for those around me. When I chose myself, I found new energy. I began to dream again. I made small plans just for me. A walk in the park, a new hobby, time to read books I loved. I noticed how these small acts of care made me feel stronger. I also spent time reflecting on who I was and what I wanted from life. I asked myself important questions. What makes me happy? What kind of life do I want? What kind of love do I deserve? These questions did not have easy answers. Sometimes they brought tears, but they also opened my heart. I started to write in a journal. Writing helped me understand my feelings. It helped me see my journey clearly. I wrote about my fears and hopes, my pain and my healing. Choosing myself meant embracing all parts of me, the strong and the weak, the happy and the sad. I learned to be gentle with myself when I made mistakes or felt afraid. I reminded myself that healing is a process, not a race. That every small step forward is a victory. I also began to forgive, not just others, but myself. Forgiving meant letting go of blame and regret. It meant freeing my heart to love again. This forgiveness was a gift I gave to myself. Choosing. Myself gave me a new kind of freedom. Freedom to live honestly. Freedom to love wisely. Freedom to be me. I noticed that when I chose myself, others began to see me differently. They respected my choices. They treated me with more kindness. I became a better mother, friend, and woman because I was whole. I realized that when I take care of myself, I have more love to give others. But that love is not from a place of need or fear. It comes from strength and peace. Choosing myself also meant trusting my instincts. I stopped ignoring the quiet voice inside that told me what was right or wrong for me. I learned to listen and trust that voice. One day I sat down with him and explained my choice. I told him that I loved myself enough to say no when I needed to. He listened quietly. I saw respect in his eyes. And though our future together was uncertain, I knew I had made the right decision. Choosing myself was not about closing the door to love forever. It was about opening the door to a better love, one that included respect, honesty, and care. I felt proud of myself, proud that I had found the courage to stand up and say, I matter. My heart matters. This choice was a turning point in my life, a moment when I stepped into my true power. I am not perfect, and I still have days when fear tries to creep in. But now, I remind myself of this truth. I am worthy. I am enough. I choose myself. The morning light came softly through the window. It was a new day. Not just because the calendar said so, but because something inside me had changed. I woke up feeling calm. Not the restless, anxious kind of calm that hides fear, but a deep, peaceful calm. It was as if I had come through a storm and found quiet on the other side. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around my room. Everything seemed ordinary. The same curtains, the same furniture, the same pictures on the wall. Yet, I knew I was different. This new day was not about forgetting the past. It was about surviving it, about living with the lessons it gave me. I smiled quietly to myself, not because I had forgotten the pain, but because I had survived it. I stood and walked to the window. Outside, the world was waking up. Birds sang softly, and the sky was painted in light blues and pinks. I took a deep breath and felt the fresh air fill my lungs. It reminded me that life keeps moving forward, that every morning is a chance to begin again. I remembered all the nights I had spent crying alone, feeling lost and small. I remembered the times I felt invisible and unheard. But today, I felt seen. I felt heard by myself. I dressed slowly and took my time with the small rituals of the morning. Making tea, choosing clothes that made me feel good, opening the curtains wide to let the light in. These simple acts felt like small celebrations of life. Later, I went outside for a walk. The air was cool and clean. I noticed the flowers beginning to bloom and the way the trees moved gently in the breeze. I thought about how nature teaches us to grow and heal, how the seasons change, and with them, we can change too. I felt grateful for this new beginning, for the chance to live with more kindness to myself and to others. When I returned home, I sat down with my journal. I wrote about this feeling of peace and hope. I wrote about the journey that brought me here. I wrote, "Today is a new day. I am not the same woman who felt broken and lost. I am stronger now. I am ready to live fully." The words gave me more strength. Writing them made the feeling real. In the afternoon, I called a close friend. We talked about life, about dreams, and about the future. She listened with warmth and kindness. It felt good to share my thoughts and to know that someone cared. I told her that this new day felt like a fresh start, a chance to build a life that reflected who I truly am. She smiled and said, "You deserve that. You have worked hard to get here." Her words touched me deeply. As the day turned into evening, I prepared a simple dinner for myself. I sat at the table with a candle lit beside me. The soft light made the room feel warm and safe. I ate slowly, savoring each bite. I thought about how far I had come, about the pain I had faced, and the strength I had found. I did not feel lonely. I felt connected to myself, to my past, and to the future I was creating. Before bed, I stood in front of the mirror and looked into my own eyes. I saw a woman who had faced storms but had not been broken. I smiled gently and whispered, "You are here. You survived. And that is something to be proud of." I turned off the light and closed my eyes, feeling grateful for this new day. This was not the end of my story. There would still be challenges ahead, moments of doubt, and times when the past would try to creep back in. But for now, I rested in this moment of peace. She smiled, not because she forgot, but because she survived. Gratitude is a quiet power. It is not always loud or obvious, but it changes the way we see the world and ourselves. That day, I felt the deep need to say thank you, not just with words, but with my heart. I thought about the people who helped me on this journey, those who stood by me when I felt weak, those who listened when I needed to speak. I thought about my friends who gave me strength without judgment, who reminded me I was not alone. I also thought about the painful moments, the times when I felt betrayed or hurt. At first, it seemed strange to feel thankful for pain. But I realized that pain taught me lessons I needed to learn. It showed me who I really am and what I truly deserve. Without those hard moments, I might still be lost. Without them, I would not have found my courage. So I decided to say thank you to the whole story, the good and the bad. I began by writing letters to people who mattered in my life, even those who caused me pain. I wrote honestly, but gently. I told them how their actions affected me. I shared how I grew because of what happened. Writing these letters was a way to release my feelings. It was a way to find peace inside. Some letters I sent. Others I kept private, just for me. Then, I spoke my thanks aloud, sometimes in the quiet of my room, sometimes during walks in the park. I said, "Thank you for teaching me strength. Thank you for showing me love. Thank you for helping me find myself." Saying thank you made me feel lighter. It felt like a soft breeze clearing away old shadows. I also thanked myself for being brave enough to face the truth, for choosing to heal, for never giving up. It is easy to forget to thank ourselves. We often focus on what went wrong, what we lost, or what we failed to do. But I learned that self-gratitude is as important as gratitude to others. One evening, I sat with my family. We were not perfect, and our wounds were still there. But the air felt softer. I told them, "Thank you for being part of my life, even when it was difficult." Some faces softened, some eyes filled with tears. In that moment, I felt connection, real and honest. Gratitude helped me see beyond anger and pain. It opened a door to forgiveness and understanding. I understood that saying thank you does not mean forgetting or accepting harm. It means choosing peace instead of bitterness. It means freeing our hearts from the heavy weight of resentment. That night, I dreamed of light, warm, golden light that wrapped around me like a gentle hug. When I woke, I felt hopeful. I knew gratitude was not a one-time act, but a daily choice. Each morning I began to say thank you for a new day, for my breath, for the small joys that life offers. I found that gratitude made even hard days softer. It helped me focus on what I have, rather than what I lost. Saying thank you became a way to heal my heart and strengthen my spirit. It was a quiet but powerful step toward living fully and freely. I want to share this with you, wherever you are listening now. No matter your story, you can find something to say thank you for. It might be a person, a moment, a lesson, or even a small kindness. Saying thank you opens your heart and fills it with light. It does not erase pain, but it helps you carry it with grace. So I say thank you to life, to love, to loss, and to hope. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for sharing this moment with me, and thank you to myself for choosing to heal and for choosing to live. Forgiving myself was the hardest part of all. It took longer than I expected. It was not a simple yes or no. It was a slow and quiet process, like healing a deep wound inside my heart. For many years, I blamed myself. I thought, if only I had done things differently, maybe this pain would not have happened. If only I had been stronger, smarter, or more careful. I carried that heavy weight every day. It made me feel small and unworthy, like I did not deserve happiness or peace. But slowly, I began to see that blaming myself did not change the past. It only made my present harder to live. I realized that forgiveness was not about forgetting or saying everything was okay. It was about kindness. Kindness toward myself. I remembered a time when a friend told me, "You would never be so hard on someone you love. Why be so hard on yourself?" That question stayed with me. I asked myself, what would I say to a friend who felt this way? Would I tell her she was a failure? Or would I hold her hand and tell her she is human? I knew the answer. I had to learn to treat myself like that friend. With love, patience, and understanding. One morning, I sat quietly in my living room. I closed my eyes and took deep breaths. I tried to listen to the voice inside that had been silent for so long. I said softly, "I forgive you. I forgive you for your mistakes. I forgive you for your fears. I forgive you for not being perfect." Tears came, but they were not sad tears. They were healing tears, washing away shame and guilt. I also forgave myself for holding on too long to pain and anger. For times when I forgot to care for myself, I forgave myself for being scared to move forward. Each time I said, "I forgive you," I felt a little lighter. I started to see that forgiveness was a gift I gave to myself. Not for others, but for me. It was a way to free my heart from the chains of the past. Forgiving myself also meant accepting that I did the best I could with what I knew at the time. No one is perfect. We all make mistakes. That is part of being human. I wrote in my journal about this new understanding. I wrote, "I am learning to love myself, even the parts I do not like. I am learning to be gentle with my heart. Some days were harder than others. The old feelings of guilt would try to return. But now, I knew how to meet them with kindness. I would remind myself, it is okay. You are healing. Keep going." Forgiving myself changed the way I saw my story. It was no longer a tale of failure, but a story of courage and growth. I began to believe that I was worthy of love and happiness, not because I was perfect, but because I was real. This forgiveness helped me build stronger relationships too. When I was gentle with myself, I could be gentle with others. I was able to open my heart without fear of being hurt again. One evening, I stood in front of the mirror. I looked deeply into my own eyes. I saw a woman who had been through so much, yet stood tall and proud. I smiled and whispered, "I forgive you. I love you." That night, I slept peacefully. For the first time in a long time, I felt whole. Forgiving myself was not the end of my journey, but a new beginning. It gave me strength to face the future with hope and courage. If you are listening now and carrying guilt or regret, I want you to know you are not alone. Forgiveness is possible. It is not easy, but it is worth it. Be patient with yourself. Speak kindly to your heart. You deserve to forgive yourself and to live with peace. Remember, forgiveness is not about forgetting or excusing mistakes. It is about freeing your soul. So today, I forgive myself. I choose love over shame. I choose healing over pain, and I invite you to do the same. Freedom is a feeling that comes quietly, softly, like the first warm rays of the sun after a long, cold winter. It does not shout or demand attention. Instead, it gently touches your soul and makes you breathe a little easier. That is how I felt the morning I truly understood what it meant to be free. For so many years, I carried invisible chains. Chains made of fear, doubt, guilt, and pain. Those chains held me back from living fully. They whispered lies in my ear. You cannot change. You are not enough. You must stay where it is safe, even if it hurts. But that day, something inside me shifted. I felt those chains break, one by one. Woke up early and stood barefoot on the cool wooden floor of my bedroom. I felt the smoothness under my feet and smiled. It was a small thing, but it made me feel connected to the earth, to life itself. I walked slowly to the window and opened it wide. A fresh breeze came in, carrying the scent of flowers and new beginnings. I closed my eyes and let the wind brush against my face. It was like the world was telling me, you are free now. You can breathe. I thought about all the things I had been carrying for so long, the anger, the sadness, the fear. They were still there, but they no longer controlled me. I felt light, as if I was shedding a heavy coat I had worn for years. Later, I put on a simple dress and went outside. The sun was warm, and the sky was clear blue. I walked barefoot on the grass, feeling every blade tickle my skin. I took slow, deep breaths and noticed the sounds around me. Birds singing, leaves rustling, the soft hum of life. I felt alive. Dancing came to my mind. I had not danced freely in a long time. Without thinking much, I started to move. At first, slowly and carefully. Then, with more confidence. My body remembered the joy of moving without fear or shame. I spun and stretched, letting my arms reach for the sky. I laughed softly, a sound that came from deep inside. I was dancing for myself, for the woman who had fought hard to be here. I danced without worry about how I looked or what others might think. I danced with freedom. That moment was pure and powerful. I realized that freedom is not just about physical space or money. It is about feeling safe inside your own skin. It is about loving yourself enough to choose happiness. It is about knowing that no one can take away your worth or your spirit. I spent the whole day outside, enjoying the simple pleasures of life. I touched the bark of trees, watched clouds drift slowly, and felt the sun on my face. I understood that freedom is also about connection, to nature, to others, and to yourself. I felt grateful for every breath, every heartbeat. At the end of the day, I sat quietly by a small lake near my home. The water was calm and clear. I looked at my reflection and smiled. There was a woman staring back at me. A woman who had been broken, but was now whole. A woman who had learned to forgive, to love, and to be free. I whispered softly, I am free. I am alive. I am enough. Those words felt like a promise I made to myself. A promise to live each day with courage and kindness. Freedom is not the absence of pain, but the courage to live in spite of it. I want you to know that you can find freedom too, even if your past feels heavy or your heart feels closed. Take small steps. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Breathe in the air of new beginnings. Dance if you can. Sing if you want. Laugh when your heart feels light. You deserve to be free. Remember, freedom starts inside, and when you find it there, it will shine out of you like light. It took a long time to say those words quietly to myself, but now I can say them clearly and with confidence. I know who I am. For many years, I did not know. I was lost in a sea of other people's expectations, hopes, and judgments. I tried to be what others wanted me to be. A good daughter, a loving mother, a perfect wife, a successful woman. But in that effort, I forgot to ask myself the most important question. Who am I? It is a simple question, but it carries so much weight. I asked myself that question many times during those quiet nights when the house was still, when no one was watching, and I could be honest with myself. At first, the answer was unclear. I saw fragments, a woman who was scared but brave, broken but healing, tired but hopeful. I realized I was not a single story. I was many stories, a collection of memories, dreams, fears, and lessons. Some stories were painful, others were full of light, but all of them were part of me. As I embraced these stories, I began to understand the real me, not the me I wanted to be, or the me others wanted to see, but the true me. I am a woman who has loved deeply and lost deeply. I am a woman who has made mistakes but learned from them. I am a woman who has cried and laughed in the same day. I am a woman who keeps moving forward, even when the path is hard. Knowing who I am gave me a new kind of power. It was not the power to control others or my circumstances. It was the power to be myself, fully and honestly. I no longer needed to hide behind masks or pretend to be perfect. I could show my true colors, even the dark ones. This acceptance brought peace. I saw that I am enough, exactly as I am. I am. Not defined by my past mistakes or the opinions of others. I am defined by my own heart and choices. I began to speak to myself with kindness and respect. I told myself, "You are worthy of love and happiness." I gave myself permission to dream new dreams and to let go of old fears. Knowing who I am also changed how I relate to others. I stopped trying to please everyone and started setting healthy boundaries. I learned to say no when I needed to protect my peace. I learned to say yes to people and things that bring joy and growth. I noticed that relationships became more honest and meaningful. People could see the real me and respond with love or distance, and that was okay. I felt lighter, freer, and more connected. Sometimes I still struggle. Sometimes doubts and old fears return. But now, I remind myself who I am. I remember my strength, my courage, and my heart. I tell myself, "You have survived so much. You are strong." I celebrate small victories, waking up with hope, speaking my truth, choosing joy. Each day is a step closer to the woman I want to be, and that woman is not perfect. She is real, she is human. She is me. If you are listening to my story, I want you to know something very important. You are not alone in your journey to find yourself. It is okay to feel lost sometimes. It is okay to ask questions and take time to answer them. The path to knowing who you are may be slow and winding, but every step you take is valuable. Every moment of self-discovery brings you closer to peace. So, I invite you to ask yourself, who am I? Be gentle with your answer. Listen with love. And remember, you are enough. You are worthy. You are whole. I know who I am now, And that knowledge is the greatest gift I have ever received. Before I finish my story, I want to share something very important with you. This is my message to you, from my heart. Life is not easy. It can be full of pain, confusion, and betrayal. Sometimes the people we love the most hurt us deeply. Sometimes we feel lost and alone. I have been there. I know how heavy that feeling can be. But I want you to remember one thing above all else. You are not alone. Even when it feels like the world is against you, even when your heart breaks, there is always hope. There is always a way forward. Yurio, pain does not define you. Your mistakes do not define you. Your past does not control your future. You have the power inside you to heal, to grow, and to find joy again. It is okay to feel sad. It is okay to cry. It is okay to take your time. Healing is not a race. It is a gentle journey, and it looks different for everyone. Be patient with yourself. Speak kindly to your heart. You deserve love from others, and most importantly, from yourself. Learn to forgive. Forgive others, but also forgive yourself. Forgiveness is not about forgetting. It is about freeing yourself from the pain that holds you back. When you forgive, you open space for peace and happiness. Do not be afraid to ask for help. Talk to friends, family, or someone you trust. Sharing your story can be a powerful step toward healing. Remember that you are strong, stronger than you think. Every time you face a challenge, you grow stronger. Every time you choose hope over fear, you take back your power. It is okay to say no. It is okay to protect your peace. You do not have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. Take time to care for yourself. Rest when you need to. Do things that make your soul smile. You are worthy of kindness, respect, and happiness. Your story matters. Your voice matters. Do not be afraid to be who you truly are. The world needs your light, your truth, and your love. I want you to know that no matter where you are in your journey, you can find your way. You can find strength in your weakness, hope in your pain, and freedom in your heart. Life may not be perfect, but it is beautiful, especially when you learn to love yourself and embrace your story. So today, I say thank you to you for listening, for being brave, for believing in yourself. May you find peace. May you find joy. May you find freedom. And always remember, you are enough. You are loved. You are never alone. This is my message to you, with all my heart.